Today we have with us Dane Witbeck. Dane, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
So Dane founded an IoT company called Meshify back in 2010 and sold it in 2016.
16, correct.
And he's going to be telling us about that whole experience. And let's start with the genesis of the idea. How did it start?
Yeah, so like a lot of startups, it went through iterations in the beginning. We originally thought we would be a home automation company in 2010. So this was pre-Nest, where this was still very much hackers and forums and everything, like talking about how you could piece together stuff at home. And we actually built a thermostat that had no screen on it, and I plugged it up to my house, and I was controlling my thermostat from my phone in 2010. And we were very excited about it. We were building this in Houston, Texas, and my partner and I were in our mid-20s, so no connections really, and no ability to raise the kind of money you need to do a consumer startup like that. Mm-hmm. But in our naivety, we sort of just tried anyway for a little while. It didn't go super well, like trying to find funding for that type of company in Houston, Texas in 2010. But what we did find was that there was a distributor up in New York City who was putting in these type of building automation systems. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up sending some of our hardware and using our backend software we were developing up to him, and he installed about 25 buildings around New York and New Jersey to control the buildings. Mm-hmm. Basically do furnace control. We had temperature sensors we'd put throughout the building, and we were basically delivering to the landlords a report that told them they were in compliance with local regulations around how much they were heating their building. Because if you actually don't have your heat on up there, you can get fined. And so we had reports for them showing they were keeping their building heated, and we were able to do that and optimize the process for it. So we went through that process, and this was now getting into 2011, end of 2011. We weren't making enough money to pay ourselves anything, although this was going okay, and we hadn't raised any money. So I kept talking to venture capitalists, and I basically got the feedback: this is a great small business, but it doesn't look like maybe it has venture scale in this particular niche. And so that was a little bit heartbreaking. And then at the same time, we started getting inbound inquiries for consulting work. Like, hey, you guys know IoT. Can you build us this? Can you build us this? And we didn't really want to do that because building a consulting company is quite a bit different than building a product company. And we didn't want to start that culture, but we also needed to eat. So there was that. So we took a couple of these contracts and we started working on them to just keep funding the company is how we looked at it. And that was when it really hit us that a lot of the features that these consulting clients needed were the same as what we were building for our building customers. And why couldn't we put this all together into one platform that would basically be able to take in data and have a flexible user interface and be an IoT platform? It turns out now that sounds probably like something you've heard a million times because there's a lot of these now. But this was now 2011, 2012. It was still pretty new. So we got much better feedback from people like angel investors and venture capitalists on this idea. Mm-hmm. So we rebranded the company from what was originally House Links to Meshify in 2012. And we went into an accelerator at the beginning of 2013 called Surge Accelerator in Houston, Texas, which accepted us based on this new premise. And that's how we got going. And we ended up converting one of those consulting clients into the first customer on the Meshify platform. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we got going.
What was the impetus for joining an accelerator?
I think we realized that we were young and didn't know a lot, right? So I remember researching this question of, is this 6% worth it? We're not getting a lot of money for it. And I remember reading one post, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was by, it's too long ago now. But it basically said, if you go through a big company route in a normal traditional career, you end up with a network naturally. Mm. You have mentors, you have customers you'll interact with, you have people, your coworkers. If you go the startup route, there's no natural network that necessarily comes to you. And one of the benefits of joining an accelerator, as you look at the arc of your career, is you get a network, right? So you get plugged in somewhere that says, we trusted you, and here's a bunch of connections and network that you can tap for a whole lot of reasons. And so that was a compelling argument to me. And I remember worrying that we were going to be like the farthest along that got accepted. Like, we're going to be the best one there. I know it. And that wasn't the case at all. We were very much just in the mix with everybody else who had also been working very hard and had early customers and early traction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think.
Did that network hypothesis end up panning out?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So we got our first enterprise customer, which is, the first customer I talked about was a business customer, but they were about a $8 million revenue company. Mm-hmm. We got a company that was $750 million revenue, like a real enterprise customer, our first one from the network from Search Accelerator. The venture capitalist who ended up putting money in our company was Mercury Fund over in Houston, and they were highly involved in Surge. I don't think we would have raised money from them without having gone through Surge. Mm-hmm. So even those two things, I think, made it well worth it. Mm-hmm. On top of that, I'm still in touch with many people from that network today. Mm-hmm.
Let's touch a little bit on the round that you raised. Why were you raising money? If you just landed this contract, I imagine
Well, I got the order mixed up. We raised the money before we landed that contract, but the contract's still not huge. It's an enterprise customer. That doesn't mean that we got a pilot with them at first, right? That's how it always works. You get a pilot, then you roll it out and get it bigger. But yeah, I mean, in software in general is expensive to build. It takes a lot of human capital. There's always a list of features that you still need to build. Mm-hmm. And we were in no different than that. So we were not cash flow positive. We were not paying ourselves a ton of money. Like, we for sure benefited and needed outside capital to make the business get where it needed to go.
And did it? Did the capital provide what you thought it would provide?
Yeah. I mean, we were able to hire a young team and build features much faster. We were able to build credibility with customers to say, hey, look, these other investors have funded the company, which when you're selling to big enterprises, they are very, very conscious of the risk that they're taking on working with a startup. It's always a major hurdle in getting in with them. And so having a brand name venture capital firm behind us definitely helped us jump over that hurdle and land some pilots and customers. So yeah, I don't regret raising outside capital for that company. Not that it's right for every company, but for that company, it definitely was. We also saw over the arc of that company's life it continually increased in competition. And what was completely a blue ocean at the beginning, by the time we sold in 2016, was very much a red ocean. I mean, the blue ocean was gone. So if anything, our mistake was not raising more money faster.
You mentioned that venture capital isn't for everybody. What types of companies isn't it for?
Well, venture capitalists are looking for definitely a certain type of company with a certain type of mentality. They're looking for companies that want to grow as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, and return and exit within 7 to 10 years. And so that ends up putting a lot of pressure onto a startup to fit that mold. So if you have a company that, one, is not capable of that type of growth because the market is too small, or that, for a number of reasons you could not fit that mold, one of those would just be the personalities of the founders. If the personality of the founder doesn't fit that mold, it's not a good fit either. So most companies are actually not the right companies for venture capital. And that's fine. I think you could build fantastic companies that are not funded by venture capital. I actually, right before I came to this podcast, met a seasoned entrepreneur who's raised money from very big name, tens of millions from very big name venture capitalists before. And now in his 50s said, I'm done with that. The next company I do, I'm not going to take venture capital. So, you got to have an honest conversation with yourself first and foremost, and also with your co-founders about what type of company are you trying to build and what are your end goals, and does venture capital fit with those?
Got it. So we're at 2013, 2014-ish with where you raised this round?
Yeah, that's right. 2013. Yeah, end of 2013 then. Yeah.
So you have this, you basically have dry powder where you can deploy it into accelerating growth. What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing that time?
Well, we thought that recruiting would become super easy. All of a sudden, we'd be blessed or something, and a halo would be around our head, and resumes would come flocking or something, but that didn't happen.
Why do you think so?
I think it's always hard to recruit people and to convince them of your vision. It takes more than just an event like that.
Yeah.
They've got to understand the mission, and they've got to feel that it's a good opportunity for them in their career. Joining a startup is not a safe thing to do, so they have to have a certain type of mentality to do that. So threading the needle, especially in an early stage company and bringing in good people, it's just a hard thing to do.
How did you bring in good people?
Again, it was about networking. So our chief architect, who was a key hire for us, was introduced to us by our venture capitalist. And he had met him at a conference and thought he was a young, smart software guy, and who had told him, hey, I'm looking for a startup to join. And he connected us, and we really hit it off. And he ended up being a really, crucial hire for us. Our VP of sales, another really crucial hire for us, actually came from a competitor.
Wow.
And he luckily had the insight himself to see, being in the space, that we were doing something that competitors weren't, and that there was value in it. So he actually approached us. So I guess in that way, we did have somebody come and knock on the door. So that was a good one. Our front end engineer, who was also a key hire, we ended up just finding through AngelList. So a job posting on AngelList, and he was very entrepreneurial and had spent time traveling. And anyway, he ended up being a great, flexible early hire.
Yeah.
By flexible, I mean able to wear more than one hat and really not need to fit into a certain, rigid job description, which is super important when you've got less than 10 people.
Yeah. So a little bit of everything, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's great. So besides hiring, what other challenges were you experiencing at the time?
Oh man, I guess you can go down the list. I mean, it's always hard to find new customers. For us, it was particularly difficult as a platform. We didn't have this one massive use case and problem where it's like, okay, all we have to do is find 10 more companies that look exactly like the last one that we landed. Right? It was like, okay, we need to find companies that are manufacturers or service providers who want to build an IoT product. So it was a real challenge for us to figure out where to go to find the next customer. And if I'm really honest about it, we never cracked that nut. All the way to the end of when we sold the company, we never cracked the nut of knowing exactly where to get a next customer from, which pipe to come and get a next customer from. It was always this hodgepodge of places that we got customers from. And when we sold, we had 25 to 30 enterprise customers. But it was always a struggle for us. We just couldn't tell the story of like, hey, put money in our spigot and we will pour out more customers, because we really never knew exactly where the customer was going to come from.
That must have been frustrating.
It was frustrating. I mean, trade shows ended up working okay for us, and that was our most reliable method. It's just not a very satisfying answer to say, well, we'll go to more trade shows.
That's really interesting, because I'd imagine that question came up during due diligence when you're selling your company. The acquirer must be thinking, okay, well, I'm acquiring this business. I must be able to grow it. How do they grow it?
So it brings up a good point. There's different types of acquirers that are acquiring a small company for a number of different reasons. One of those may be that they love your business and that they want to take part in its growth, right? This company was partially that, but that was a minority part of their thinking. The majority of their thinking was, we have a use case for this technology. We know we can bring customers onto our use case. So let's buy this company and make sure that we own the value that we create with our customers, with our use case. So in the beginning, we got bought on those two theses. One, that we'll continue to grow our own customer base under our own brand. And number two, that we would service them and their use case and be an in-house toolkit for them to make their use case run. In their case, it was an insurance company doing IoT to reduce risk on buildings.
Very interesting. And how did you meet them?
So they were a customer. So, okay, there was one thing we did that really worked in our company, okay? And this is a testament to, one, how bad we were at marketing, but two, if you find one thing that works, how well it can help your company, okay? When I thought to myself, where am I going to find the next customer? The classic question everyone tells you to ask is, well, where do your customers go naturally? Where do they go? Where do they gather? Where do they congregate? And how can you get in front of them in that spot? And I thought to myself, well, the only place my customers go is probably to Google, searching for other platforms like mine. And so by the time I did this, which was 2014, I said that we moved from a blue ocean to a red ocean. This was sort of when we were in the pinkish range or whatever, before it was totally red. But I found 50 competitors of ours, literally 50 named customers. And we ran Google ads against every single one of their names, all the way down the list from building automation specialty ones to oil and gas ones. We had 50 customers, and we bought their name on Google and said, Meshify versus that platform in the ad. And then we had a versus page for each one of them that would do a feature head-to-head against them. And so the acquirer found us through one of those ads, through one of the ads where they were looking at a bunch of different IoT platforms. And they said, hey, we like this one, but hey, who's this Meshify who, is also in this space? And by the time we did sell the company, when we were going to trade shows at that point, I mean, everybody in the industry knew us. I don't know how many of the customers knew us, but everyone in the industry would look at us and be like, you're those guys. You're those guys that have been all over Google with our name.
That's funny.
So I think now Google has some rules about if you can actually show their name in the ad. You can still buy against other people's names, but I don't think you can put their name in your ad anymore. Anyway, but that was a hack that I think brought us customers, and ultimately that company that bought us became a customer. So they were a customer for about a year before they ended up buying the company.
Got it. And when they were interested in buying the company, they just approach you and say, we want to buy your company. How did the process go?
No. So that's also a really fun story. We looked and said, what's the next for our company? We had a strategic offsite meeting. And we said, well, we need to go out for a Series A round of funding in 2016. So we compiled our list of potential investors, and it turned out that this customer had built a strategic venture capital arm only in the last year or two before that. And so they had a San Francisco office. They had their sign out. We're strategic money. So we went and knocked on their door. We talked to our contact first at the company and said, hey, how are things going with our product? Of course, oh, it's going great. We like it. Well, hey, we're raising more money for our startup. Can we meet your venture capital arm? And they said, sure. Here's their email, blah, blah, blah. They connected us. We flew out to San Francisco, and we met with their venture capitalists as part of our fundraising process. And it turned out in mid-2016, in the early summer, we had gotten an out-of-the-blue sort of offer to buy the company from another company. And it was, to be honest, not a great offer. It was a company that was public but traded on pink sheets. For those that aren't familiar, that means they're basically too small and junky to make it onto a real public stock market. So they had about $20 million in revenue, and they were based in San Jose. But it was an offer to sell, and we would have done okay with it, but not fantastic. So it wasn't a super compelling offer. But we go to meet this, we're going out to raise funding, and we go to San Francisco, and we meet the strategic venture capital arm, and we do our whole pitch. We do an hour meeting, great discussion. At the very end, I say, and, just so you know, we do have an offer on the table to buy the company. And it was like all of a sudden, like silence, and everyone looks at each other and looks across at us. And I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect like such a dramatic moment. And the strategic venture capital arm, her name's Jacqueline. She's stopped and she said, "Are you going to take it?" And we said, we came here to pitch you because we're looking to raise money. So, it's not our intention to take this offer. We just wanted you to know it's on the table. And, we're trying to raise this money because we want to grow the business bigger, blah, blah, blah. So we're not planning on taking it, but, it's there and it's nice to be asked. So they started asking more questions. Who is it? What kind of offer is it? And I didn't tell them anything. I was like, look, it's a Bay Area public company. I can't say anything more than that. And, which was all true, but, probably not what they imagined when I said Bay Area public company. So she stopped and said, look, would you sell this company like today? Would you sell it today? And I said, we didn't build this company to pass it down to our grandchildren, if that's what you're asking. Yeah. So, I mean, we would entertain any type of discussion if you were interested in going that route. And she said, well, promise me, this was like a Thursday. She said, promise me you won't sell the company before next week. And I'm like, well, that's okay. And like I said, we were planning on selling the company. It's an easy promise to make. We won't sell it till next week. So literally the next Tuesday, she got the CEO of the company and the CFO, and they brought 5 or 6 people. They all flew to Houston. We actually moved our office over that weekend because of this event. My co-founder actually had to be out of town that weekend. He calls me on the Friday and he's like, look, we can't have them come see our 750 square foot office. He's like, I think that they're either going to fund the company or they're going to buy the company. They've made that clear. I'm sorry I'm not there, but you should move the office.
Oh, man.
And so we moved it within the building. I went and talked to the landlord. He had an open space that was 3,300 square feet.
Wow.
And we had a really cool building in Houston, but we had a tiny little windowless office. And I was like, look, I want to move in. Here's the check. You have nobody in there. And he was like, okay, sure. Here's the key. And so we moved downstairs and bought $15,000 worth of furniture in one weekend to do the entire office out.
Crazy.
And I had, everyone came and helped, and so we looked amazing. Everyone walks in, and the CEO looked around for about 5 minutes, and as he's coming into the conference room, said, well, I didn't know what I expected in Houston, Texas, but I didn't expect this level of San Francisco. That's what he said. And I think it really helped, but who knows? So they ended up doing meetings all day with us that day, and at dinner that night, the CEO said, look, this is the company we want to buy. We want to make you an offer. I'm going to turn it over to my CFO from here, and there's going to be a process.
Incredible.
And that's kind of how it went. And then there was a process. He was right. It took about 3 or 4 months from there to get to closing.
That's incredible. So before we dive into what that process was exactly like, one thing I asked my guests is, when is the right time to sell? Yeah,
so that's a great question. One thing that we got right with Meshify between my co-founder and myself is that we really were on the same page of what the goal with the company was. From when I first asked him to join me on this journey, like in 2010, I said, look, I had my first job. I was in my mid-20s. I was making $55,000 a year as an engineer. And I said, look, I've got $55,000 a year. It's almost no risk for me to quit my company right now because this is almost no money. I feel like we hustled to more money than this when we were in our teens, Like if we were doing it full time, we would have made more money than this then. I said, so the bar for us, it seems to me, is do better than we would have done on a corporate career path. If we can do better than we've done on a corporate career path, then how could you not call that a win? And then count up everything that we'll learn along the way and all the people that we'll meet. And so that was our whole goal, was just do better than we could do on a corporate career path.
Yeah.
It wasn't a high bar, really. And we weren't, of course we had visions and dreams of it being a huge company, and we wanted that and everything. But when it came down to it, this offer totally satisfied the original assumptions or the original goal that we set out to accomplish, to get a W on the board, to get a win on the board, and to make it better than a corporate career path. And so when the offer came that met those conditions, it wasn't that hard to say yes. The other thing that made it easy to say yes was, like I said, we noticed the market was turning from blue ocean to red ocean. We saw that a mile away. We were highly involved in it. We were going to these conferences. So we knew about our industry and our competitors very deeply. Like I said, I ran those competitive ads. I have always been on top of what's happening in the industry that I'm in. I think that really helped to make the decision and say, look, we've got big players coming in. We've got IBM, we've got Cisco, we've got Microsoft, we've got Amazon, we've got people spending $50 million a year on just marketing and advertising to compete against us. So, we're in Houston, Texas. What are we going to do? Yeah. It was daunting. It was becoming a daunting industry to be a small company in. I'll put it that way. So you take this meeting that this company flies to your brand new Houston office. Yeah. With the price tags probably still attached to the furniture. You've got it nailed. That's pretty much what it was like. And this is just after you guys got an acquisition offer from somebody else. Are you thinking this is it, or maybe we should try to find competitive offers from other people? Or are you thinking, we don't have time, the market's turning, we got to be quick about this? Where's your head at? I definitely thought we wanted to either do this deal or get it off the table and move on with life, so that we could keep focusing on the business. I didn't want it to be a situation where all of a sudden we were in love with the idea that we had to sell the company, and now we go out and find competitive offers. In my opinion, the best deals are always when an acquirer buys a company, not when a company sells the company. So hopefully that makes sense. But they come in wanting to buy as opposed to you going out saying, hey, can I sell it? Yeah. Right? So we have somebody, we have them there. They want to buy the company. They're a big company with plenty of resources. They've known us for a year. That's not something you just snap your fingers and come up with. So there was no legitimate, I don't think, option of saying, hey, let's go shop it.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't come up. But it did come up that, hey, let's make sure they're serious. Let's make sure that we get them fully engaged and that they are serious, so that we get a number that makes us and all of our stakeholders, our investors, and everybody pleased with this outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And if all that lines up, then let's go forward and do it. And so all that came together in about a week for the LOI.
Wow.
The first step is the letter of intent.
Yeah.
So they gave us a letter that's signed by us and them, non-binding, but basically spells out, we'll buy the company for this much money.
Mm-hmm.
We expect you to stay on for these many years. And there's different terms that can go into this letter of intent, but you want it to be as specific as you can at that point, because anything that's not that specific, you can assume over the course of their due diligence period, which comes after that, it's going to get worse for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we were lucky to have built a great network of advisors, right? Our venture capitalists helped. Our attorneys were fantastic. Our advisors and angel investors who were advisors also, who had been through these types of processes before. I mean, this is where that network really starts to show its value in terms of just experience that you can't snap your fingers and get, and you can't find on a blog, you know.
So you definitely don't want to do that alone. Go through that process alone. I
wouldn't want to. Yeah, it was a it was a tough process. I mean, it's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Long nights and sleepless nights of, you know, worrying about the company and also worrying about the deal at the same time.
Yeah. You
don't want to tell your people about it because it's not a for sure thing yet. So now you feel like you're hiding things from people that you care about and have worked with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough process to go through, and the more support and help you have from seasoned advisors and people around the company, the better, I think.
How did your advisors help you navigate the M&A due diligence process to allow you to continue operating the business? Because operating the business is a full-time endeavor. Due diligence is a full-time endeavor. How did you guys split work between you, your advisors, and your co-founder? Yeah,
my co-founder was amazing. He was the first resource that I could turn to say, hey, I need you to really step up and run more things on the business side because I've got to run this deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first resource. Our attorneys were great, came to the rescue, and we talked about should we get like a banker or should we get someone else involved to sort of help this process. Our attorney said, hey, look, the deal's really not that large to need that. We can handle the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And they were totally right. And so, they were a big help in just understanding what's in the legal contracts, what considerations, do we need to be thinking about, what's normal. We don't have any clue what's normal, what's market, They do these things day in and day out, so they have a lot better sense of what works, what is in market, what's out of market for sort of our size deal. And then our advisors, nobody jumped in and started answering the phones or anything. I don't think it's fair to expect that.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing they did was just provide support and say, hey, look, we're behind you. We believed in you. We believed in this company. However this process works out, we're still going to be behind you. Mm-hmm. I should mention, during that week between when they came to dinner and when we got the LOI signed, we raised a convertible note round.
Oh, interesting.
From our investors. And the reason why was because we didn't have a ton of money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And we knew this process was going to take some amount of months during which we're still burning cash and which we're locked in. So once you sign an LOI, you're locked into a no-shop period, which means both you cannot raise outside funding and you cannot go shop the company to anyone else. So they want you to be captive to this deal, which makes sense. They're putting resources into it. Mm-hmm. So we knew that once we opened our books to them during due diligence, they would see our sort of weak position and they would sort of see, hey, look, these guys don't really have any other option but to sell to us, and the deal could get worse for us, right? So we told our investors, look, we're going to put a convertible note together at essentially it was half off the price of the deal.
Wow.
I said, if you'll put in, it was just $300,000, but if you'll put in $300,000, it'll make us feel more comfortable where we can tell this acquirer if we need to go pound sand and we'll still be able to come out of this and then go back to raising our A round and still have time to complete that, right? And so our investors, to their credit, heard the story, understood the story, trusted us enough to put together $300,000 in literally days, literally a couple of days.
Incredible.
Yeah. So, man, I'm grateful to them to this day, but at the same time, they got 90-day or whatever it was, 110-day not quite that good, but 1.6 times in about that.
Not bad.
Yeah. So they got a pretty good deal.
I'm curious, in the LOI, was the acquisition offer kind of a fixed number, or was it a multiple of, revenue or EBITDA?
No. I mean, the whole thing was not based on financials. And a lot of times these early deals are like that, right? Like they're not a multiple EBITDA kind of deal. It's more what's the strategic value to the company. So they came up with a number. Their first number was low. And we basically, had to sort of search our soul. But I told my co-founder, I was like, they don't put out their best number first.
Right.
Obviously, they're not going to do that. So I think we need to feel confident and tell them no on this. So we told them no. They showed a lot of disappointment and, whatever. They're very good at what they do on the other side. You got to expect that. But we ended up coming to a reasonable number. It was a low 8-figure kind of exit for an early company. In total, we only raised $1.3 million for the company before we exited. So low exit number or low amount of money raised, not that high of an exit, but overall that means everybody made money.
Yeah.
Like we made money, the investors made money.
Yeah.
And the acquirer was able to pick up a company for a good deal, really. So I think it's a win-win-win all around for this particular deal. But yeah, we stuck to our guns. We got the number up to what made us happier and our investors happier. And we were able to, this is the other thing, we were able to use our venture capitalists as a bit of a stalking horse to say look, they would fund the company for more than this, like we can always go back to them and they want to put in more money. They're a little torn about this whole deal anyway. So, you got to give us something that makes sense to them.
Having leverage seems important.
Oh man. Yeah. You got to think through a million things. And I had so many phone calls with advisors, with the angel investors, with the venture capitalists, and with our attorney, just where you spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes just sort of talking through everything, and they really help to shape your mind around it, of what the next step is. How
did getting into the due diligence process of selling your company impact your day-to-day operations of running your business?
It impacted them a lot, and negatively.
Okay.
I mean, I was totally distracted during that period from being able to focus on customers, product, marketing. I mean, in my mind, I know that everyone else on the team was still doing stuff. But in my mind, it seemed like it went to a standstill because I was just completely, sort of sidelined. So huge distraction. I think our revenue did flatten during those 3 months. So yeah, you got to be really cognizant of that when you go into this process of the toll it's going to take on the company. So it's not without cost for sure getting into it. And according to the research I did when I went into it, about 2 out of 3 companies make it through from LOI to close. So you got a little better than half chance, but still a huge percentage chance you don't close that deal for one reason or another.
Got it. If you were to consult your younger self, like knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell me at that time, be more bold about asking for more money for the company. I think that they were going to buy it. I think they knew they wanted it. It's easy to say now too, seeing that it actually worked out for them. Like the company has been a great buy for them. The revenue is way up, and it was a good buy for them, a good deal. So it's easy to say now, but I think they would have paid 20% more easily. Essentially, it feels like. So I would have probably said be more bold.
Yeah.
Ask for more money for what you built.
Yeah.
The other thing is, let's see. I think the people you surround yourself with are so important. So the more good people you can get onto the team, the better. I think I wasn't quite focused enough on the people. Just really, really focused on recruiting and finding the best people to run the business. I was always sort of working in the business, and when I had time, working on the business. And I think I could have stepped out of in the business sooner and worked on the business sooner and try really hard to get the best quality people on the team, get them motivated, keep the vision going for them, and let them really do the work. I had a hard time giving up the work. Being an engineer by training and background, it was a hard transition for me going from individual contributor to manager to CEO.
Yeah.
And I think during the time at Meshify before we sold, I never made it fully to CEO. Once we sold and I had 2 more years to work for the acquirer and had a lot more people under me and a lot more resources to focus on, I think that's where I really developed into a CEO.
Got it. That's good advice.
Yeah.
So the diligence process was, you said 3 or 4 months approximately.
Correct. Yeah. We signed the letter in June, July, maybe early July, and we closed in October, or very beginning of October. So July, yes. Yeah. So about 3 months.
What were some surprises that occurred along the way?
Man, just how incredibly detail oriented they can get about stuff they say they don't care about, and also just an entity like that doesn't operate in a cohesive manner, right? It's more a bunch of individuals than it is one cohesive mind. So, I mean, we would take data that they had seen 3 different ways and have to show it a 4th and 5th way, just because, I don't know, someone else asked for it, you know? So, yeah, that was a bit surprising, I'd say, to see like how messy that could get in a way. But I mean, what else was surprising? That's a good question. I think also just how the people, some of the mid-level managers at a company like that can be really confused about what's happening, right? And I didn't really fully appreciate that till I joined the team. But after looking back and now having some perspective, I see that during that process, during the due diligence process, some of those people that were involved, they didn't totally grasp the strategic value of what was happening. They didn't. They weren't involved in some of the highest level meetings, but yet they were still asked to be on the due diligence team. And so, just appreciating that not everybody is on the same page, at a big company like that. This is sort of the short answer.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's actually a good segue into my next question, which is around the transition into the company.
Yeah.
So after the acquisition is complete, you're now part of the acquirer.
Yeah. We literally signed employment papers that we worked for the acquirer.
So what was that transition like from owning and running your own company to now being part of a company that acquired you?
It was a gradual change. So, I mean, to their credit, this company tried very, very hard. The name of the company is HSB. They tried very hard to keep us independent and to let us keep running the business the way it had been. And that they tried that as hard as they could, but it's just like their tentacles just reach out. And it's not even from the upper level people. It's from everybody else in their gigantic organization. The tentacles just come, right? And so even if the senior level management doesn't want it, things just happen, So I think it was gradual. At first, it was like not a lot has changed. I do have a boss, that's a new thing. But I've been reporting to investors, so I kind of reported to my boss like I reported to my investors. I gave them sort of board level information and kind of expected to, run the ship my own way. But, the budgeting process was not as clean as I would have liked, right? So they sort of wanted to just keep control of the money, basically, is to put it long and short of it. They wanted to keep control of the money. They didn't want to just hand over the money and say, hey, go take this money and use it for your company. They wanted to have some controls on that, which makes sense. Of course, it's, their money that they're investing and they want to see how it's being used. So that was the first real integration with them, was probably just, financial integration, like their books now being in. One of the things I missed right away was when they took over our books, I couldn't just turn to my QuickBooks, which is what we were using. I couldn't just pull up the financials anymore. It was in some SAP system somewhere, and I'd have to email somebody and be like, can I get a report? And then a few days later, maybe they'd be like, oh, I'll get around to it, So it was not great from a financial management standpoint. I was trying to keep on top of the books.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I remember. But yeah, and then HR. HR was probably the next thing that was a big change, right? Like we were very used to doing everything. So we just hire people, we hire contractors, we hire employees. If somebody's not working out, sorry, see you later, Like it didn't happen all the time, but it does happen, especially with contractors.
Of course.
And when you're working now for with their HR department at a company like that with thousands of employees, that's a different thing, where it's like, have you given them an employee improvement plan? Like, what? What's that? Can you train me on that? I don't know what you're talking about. So, just there's some culture mismatch there, where it's like we have to get used to some new norms. This is what it takes to, do things in a safe manner from an HR perspective.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was a period of adjustment of going from lean and nimble to kind of a little larger and bureaucratic.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's put in a nutshell. Yeah.
Do you have any last pieces of advice for entrepreneurs who maybe are or at one point might consider selling their company?
Yeah, sure. I would say for me personally, I've had no regrets. I think the things that I thought made it a good reason to sell at that time have in my head totally held up. There's been continual new investment in the space of IoT. I moved to Austin as part of the deal, which has been fantastic, into a more tech-centric ecosystem like from Houston. So I'd say one, this whole career path can work. Mm-hmm. That's one thing to think about. Like if you're worried about how this can work out, can it ever work out? Like it did, it can. It worked out for us, and it's been fantastic. It's been life-changing for my family and for me and my co-founder and a whole bunch of other people. So this can work. Stick with it. Build a great business. Build a business that really serves customers and focuses on their needs, because ultimately that's what the company loved about our software and our business, was that it met the use case that they were trying to solve for, and they didn't see it anywhere else in a readily available package, and they looked far and wide. So focus on your customers and build something that they really value and need in their business. And if you focus on those things, then I think some of the other stuff, which seems like dumb luck in a way, can end up happening because you focused on the right things, right? So
awesome. Dane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.